the process of ensuring that our students
Beatrice Ilachi. Okay, she's not here. Okay. What is that name? The Honorable Susan Kiamba, member for Makwiny.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. While I appreciate the motion on board on the issue of uniform, I have a few questions that I wish the presenter makes very clear. When already we have uniform in schools, what new thing are we bringing on board? Are we suggesting, just like we had the buses, we have all yellow, all green? If that is the case, I think we would miss the objective of uniform. Because mainly the objective of uniform in class is identification and being able to know which institution has what kind of uniform. And basically that is meant for discipline and all other factors that have actually been explained by the mover of this motion. And two, what are we really standardizing? Is it the price? Is it the style? Is it the design? I think we need to be very clear what in particular are we going to standardize. In the case of the buses, we were standardizing the color. The sizes were different. But now when we come to uniform, what actually are we going to standardize? Because already the current status in Kenya, we don't have a school which has no uniform. And I think even the big bone of contention has been, especially in the rural areas, the high prices that some schools are charging uniform. So Madam Speaker, sir, I really need to understand. No, Madam Speaker, sorry. Madam Speaker, I really need to understand the objective of this particular motion. Otherwise, I think in my view, it might be a very retrogressive agenda for this particular country. I can't imagine a Kenya where every student I see is in green. It's even boring. I think I need to see green, yellow, and I think it's also discouraging to the manufacturers. We need, I think, different colors give beauty. So I think in my view, Madam Speaker, I think this motion need to be revised. We need to understand its depth and length, because without that, it may be very difficult to know actually what is it that we want changed in Kenya and what objective are we going to achieve by having that. Personally, I would think the revision would look at the pricing, especially in rural areas. Many head teachers are charging a lot of fee, and they want very high class uniform in rural areas where people are used to cheap materials. I think if it is that, I would actually support. But in the, on the whole, I think if uniform is what I see even around with some of the schools present, I think it's enough to have unique for every school and every area. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, I wish to recognize the presence of two schools in the Speaker's gallery. That is Juvenjee Mixed Secondary School from Kipipiri constituency, Nyandarua County. I also wish to recognize again in the Speaker's gallery, Kanyakine High School from Imenti South constituency, Meru County. And you will not, and Honorable Wamushomba will be happy to know, that both schools have the same uniform. I also wish to recognize the following two schools who are seated in the public gallery: Kinderworld Academy from Lang'ata constituency, Nairobi County, and Porterhouse International School from Westlands constituency, Nairobi County. And I think it would be wrong for me to take all the compliments about my dress code without recognizing the fundis who did the work: Mrs. Paulina Otieno of Nairobi County and Mrs. Onyango Apollo, who has a small kiosk in Eldoret town. Asante.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And you're very right to recognize and appreciate the tailors who have done this wonderful work. And as I also pay tribute to you as the Speaker and the leader of the House, and the other ladies who are here, including Honorable Gathoni Wamushomba, the Honorable Aika Mizigi is here, the first chairperson, Honorable Wangari, and Honorable Keme is here, the Deputy Whip. I saw Caroline Ngelechei, she's on the other side. It's wonderful. And the two ladies from Kisii and Nyamira, and the other ladies who are waving here, great ladies. You are all very well dressed. I think we the men will have to take a cue from you so that we can also have African designers designing for us a dress that is going to be acceptable to this house, so that we stop wearing these suits which have been worn since 1963 and there before, and we continue wearing them, whether it is hot, whether it is cold, whether it is what. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to support the motion by the Honorable Wamushomba as regards school uniforms. And as we debate this, we have schools that are here, so we are able to see exactly what uniforms do. The importance of school uniforms cannot be overemphasized. It is important that we actually maintain, which was started those days when formal education was introduced into the country. Those days when possibly they used to wear shirts only, they used to wear vests in form of uniform, whatever it was. Even where we have rural schools, and these are poor places, poor parents, uniforms may be tattered all the time. School uniform gives a sense of belonging to all students. You become proud, you associate yourself with your school, and whenever it is, even if it's a competition, you do the best because you know your school's reputation is at stake. Even when you are out there in terms of discipline, you have to ensure you are well disciplined, because if you misbehave, your school will actually be put into disrepute. We know very well that in the rural areas, especially constituencies, we have all manner of uniforms that are worn by students. We know very well that school uniforms do not distinguish pupils, whether they are from a rich background or whether they are from a poor background. In my constituency, there are schools that are considered to be elite, there are others that are considered to be poor. But when they are together and each school has its own uniform, no distinction whatsoever can be made between one school and the other. And what matters then is the results of every competition, including academic competition, sports competition, and whatever other competition there is. As we debate this motion, and I urge the House actually to pass it so that the government can go to the drawing board and get us to be working with uniforms that are standardized, and especially in terms of prices. Today, And it's important, yesterday we were discussing about CBC. We have grade 7 in place, and one complaint we are receiving from the schools is the exorbitant price of uniforms. This must be looked into. The second issue that is coming in is that every head teacher in every school wants to make a quick buck by selling school uniforms. Some of that uniform is of very low quality. It is not well tailored, as a result of which parents end up paying lots of money, exorbitant prices, so that they can buy uniform, which to a great extent is substandard. The Ministry of Education must come up with set standards. And the standardization does not mean we have to have one color. What we are saying is we are possibly going to have different colors, but the same material, the same format of tailoring, and everything else that is to be done. That way, the price of uniform is likely to be standard, and it's also likely to be affordable to parents, including those from rural homes, those from poor places where money is scarce. This idea of telling parents, pay certain sums of money into specific bank accounts, then you come to school to get uniform, is what is leading to a rip-off of our parents. If we go back to the days of yore, we may have specific tailors in specific markets and towns who deal in school uniforms. There is possibility of competition, and the competition is extremely healthy, especially in terms of sale of goods, where tailors will compete on not only quantity, not only quality, but also in pricing. So I believe part of the policy we are calling for is an abolition to schools becoming vendors of school uniform. Let that be left to school outfitters, those outfitters out there who deal with school uniforms to benefit our children. And as I said, it's good to point out that when we talk about standardization and we look back into our constituencies and see the schools we have and the sort of parents who actually take those children to school, it is very important. We know that the agenda of this house is to reduce the education burden of our parents. Let parents pay less school fees. Let them buy inexpensive but high quality uniform, shoes and socks, so that our children are able to go to school in a dignified manner. They are able to learn in an atmosphere where no child feels to be lesser to the other one. No child feels because I'm wearing bad uniform, I'm therefore inferior. As we do this, then we are saying education will have a meaning and will be of benefit to our children and to ourselves as Kenyans. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I beg to support.
Honorable Member for Garissa Town, the Honorable Major Deco Barrow. I think that will be your maiden speech.
Maybe, okay. Yes. Asante sana. Is it on? Okay. Madam Speaker, my name is Major Deco Mohammed Barrow, for Garissa Township, Member of Parliament for Garissa Township. The name Major arises from I was in the military. I am the second Major in this house. Unfortunately, I was warned by the Major Bashir that I can only use this title out of this house because he has patented that title. Well, Madam Speaker, as I rise as a new Member of Parliament and the first time I'm standing on the floor of the House, I also got a title from the colleagues here, some of the colleagues who gave me a title of being the lowest ranking member of the House. Ranking member of the House. And I've noticed many titles here have come with some certain privileges. So I accept it as the lowest member, ranking member of the House. So, and I think the titles have come with certain privileges. So I hope in the standing orders I will be considered with that title, to enjoy certain privileges, maybe after the minority whip or something like that. Madam Speaker, I represent a constituency of, which is cosmopolitan in nature. I had the opportunity while campaigning to have met almost 43 communities of Kenya, all residing and doing their businesses and living, looking for their livelihoods within my constituency. My constituency is also partly urban and partly rural. Maybe 30 or 40% of my constituency is also a rural constituency, and then the other 70% is an urban constituency. Having said that, I want to first of all to thank the people of Garissa town for giving me this honor to stand in this house to represent them as their member of parliament. Special thanks, of course, goes to my predecessor, Honorable Duale, who is now the current Cabinet Secretary of Defense, for his immense contribution to the constituency of Garissa in terms of development, in terms of leadership. Many of my colleagues here ask me whether I will be able to fit in his shoes. Duale, as a leader, a member of parliament, you all know, and I know as well, has been a very astute leader, a debater in this house, and at the constituency level, he has established a good foundation for me to build on as the next member of parliament. So I thank all those who contributed to my win, and he also supported me. He was honestly invested so much, both emotional and resources, to ensure that I get elected as a member of this house. Madam Speaker, as a constituency, we face a lot of challenges that in my term as a member of parliament in this house, I will be able to be a priority for me. One of the major challenges we face now is the drought issue as a constituency. This drought has affected us, though major part of a section of my constituency is urban. We really depend on the pastoralist or livestock business as a trading business for my constituency, as the economic enabler for my constituency. We have been really affected by the ravaging drought, which is affecting not only my constituency, but also 24 pastoralist communities or counties. Madam Speaker, this has brought in a lot of challenges for my constituency, and one of them is now we have noticed or we realized that we have climate refugees in my constituency, in that people who have lost their livelihoods in the constituency or the neighboring constituencies have been forced to move into Garissa without anything, and now they have to be taken care of by the agencies, donor agencies, and the government of Kenya, meaning they are settling on land that will eventually bring a conflict among the communities living in this constituency. The other problem we are facing as a result of this drought is that parents, communities have lost their livelihoods, and that means they cannot be able to fend for their families, means they cannot take their children to school, and this is a challenge I am facing as a member of parliament. Means over 100% of the transition to secondary school and university, I have to take care of it in terms of the CDF fund that we have been allocated. This is a big challenge for us. The other problem we face as a county or as a constituency is the issue of education that we need to address, or I need to address as a member of parliament, and that is we have an exodus of teachers. And unfortunately, yesterday in this house, we were debating on the issue of junior secondary schools, and we have almost 100% transition from my constituency into junior secondary school and also into secondary school. This is a very big problem for the constituency. We already had a problem of teachers allocation from the national government or from the Teacher Service Commission. Out of the 30,000 recruited teachers in the last this year, we managed only to get only 15 out of that as a constituency. We already had a shortfall in my constituency, and that is an area we need an affirmative action for my constituency. The other area or situation we are facing as a constituency is on issue of civil documents. The issue of passports, the issue of identity cards, ID cards. Madam Speaker, my constituency, when young people want to get IDs, they have to undergo a very tedious vetting process, unlike the rest of the country. We need another decision made by the government on this issue of IDs. The vetting process for us is too tedious, is too discouraging for us. The other issue is the passport issue. We had a passport control office in Garissa. Unfortunately, it was moved as a result of, I will say, politics. Because it was moved immediately, the Member of Parliament for Garissa Township was moved from the majority leader position. And now we are facing that we have to travel to Nairobi to get this important travel document. To bring to your attention, we have a big population of Garissa constituents who go every year for Hajj to Mecca to perform a religious duty in the numbers of 3,000 to 4,000 a year. We have young people who are seeking employment with NGO community or NGO world in Somalia and region, who have to come and seek these travel documents from Nairobi. It is getting too expensive. It takes too long to access those documents. We need this office returned back to Garissa and to serve the people of the northern region, not only Garissa constituency, but the counties of Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Isiolo, and Tana River. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you once again for giving me this opportunity, and inshallah, God willing, I will be participating in the debate coming in. On the issue that was on the table today, the issue of that was about the uniform standardization. In my opinion, as a Member of Parliament for Garissa, as one of the members have said here, there is we do not understand, I do not understand the essence of the motion. In that the standardization, we already have uniforms in schools. So we need to be clear on what we want to standardize. The issue of what we should discourage is that principals or school teachers asking to be given money to go and buy school uniforms on behalf of our children. That should be the responsibility of the parents to address that. So I do.
Your time is up, Honorable Member, and members can make it brief so that more people can be able to have an opportunity. I'd like to call upon Member for Taita Taveta, Lydia Mzigi.
Madam Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity. And from the onset, I want to support and congratulate Honorable Gathoni Wamshomba for this well-thought motion. And Madam Speaker, I want to say education is an equalizer. And education being an equalizer, there are several things that come in hand with that one. We come from different backgrounds as we go to school, Madam Speaker. And for students or for people to look or to feel the same or to feel equal in school, uniform is the only thing that makes them feel equal. I want to support the standardization of school uniform again, because it is also good for identification. Madam Speaker, I remember when I was in school, most of the time it was a day school, and at times we'll have another school misbehaving somewhere, and it had the same uniform with our school. And therefore, if you'll hear in the newspaper writing that a certain school, some students misbehaved somewhere. There was a school that had an indiscipline case someplace, and because the uniform of that school resembled our school, they could not be able to differentiate which school was there and which between this other school and the other. Therefore, I support, but not, these uniforms should not look the same. Let's allow a variety of colors, but standardization should come to a point whereby we should not allow the students to go to school with maybe home clothes and stuff like that. But when it comes to school uniform, I agree, and I support that it should be there, and it should be allowed. Madam Speaker, I also want to say that it is only when we have a school uniform, it is part of instilling discipline in school. Because when we are in school and we look the same in that uniform, it is easy for us to conduct ourselves in a certain manner. And everybody comes with a design that they want, and therefore the feeling in school is not in harmony, is not the same. There are some who will feel that they are better than the other. There are some who feel that maybe they have dressed more expensive than the other, and therefore demoralizing the ones that cannot afford that much of an expensive uniform. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I think this is a very good idea, only that it needs to be supported. Again, I know that there are some schools that have taken advantage of this uniform thing, because you find parents buying the uniform where they can afford, and when they get to school they are told, no, this is not the uniform that we want a certain uniform. And because they sell that specific uniform, they are in business, they buy that uniform, and therefore they make the parents return the other uniform that they bought, maybe a cheaper uniform, for them to be able to buy the expensive uniform that is being sold in schools. And therefore it has become a business, and this is what is discouraging most of the parents. I have witnessed this. I have supported students here and there going to school, and I'm told, oh, the uniform that we bought in a certain shop was not the right one. We go to school and they told us, no, we cannot admit you, the students, in this uniform, therefore you have to buy the uniform that is provided in school. And for some reasons you find that uniform in school is just a business there between some schools there, and it becomes very, very expensive for the parents. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And as I wind up, I want to say, Madam Speaker, you look very smart in your African attire. Congratulations, and let's support our local tailor. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Taita Taveta. I now call upon Honorable Wanjiko Muhia, Member for Kipipiri, Nyandarua County. I think your students are here.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to welcome the students from Wajohi Mixed Secondary School and their teachers and parents who have visited the National Assembly and Senate to see the proceedings. And in this motion, I want to congratulate Honorable Gathoni wa Mushoba, which is so timely. And Honorable Speaker, as I walked inside, I was trying to trace my students, and I couldn't identify them because they look the same as those one from Meru County, only that my county has a lot of Mokorino, so at least I saw two. And I noticed that mine are sitting on the front benches, and I welcome them very much. Honorable Speaker, having said that, this is a good motion, and I think going forward in the current times, we need to standardize many things, and we find sometimes that the school uniforms with this current economic hardship is expensive than the school fees, and this beats the logic. You find the school uniform can cost 30, 40, even 50,000 Kenya shillings, especially in the boarding schools, while maybe the school fees is 20,000. Really, it beats the logic, and we need a policy that can standardize this. However, we must not forget where we come from, and what Honorable Aika have just indicated, that it is good every school be allowed that freedom of choosing its own uniform, its own choice of colors, so that they are also different in their kind. Because even currently, when we are doing infrastructure, you find school A like maybe color green, and you find all the iron sheet are green, red, blue, or whichever. So the identity is important. The students can be identified with the different colors, so that we shouldn't lose that we say all children wear the same. And basically, this is a very good example where their own MP cannot identify them from Meru County. Having said that, we must remember that we are living in hardship and economic crisis. And this idea of telling all students to go to shop A and buy from the shoes there, the sweater there, while these things are available even in Motuba. If a shoe is black, a parent can go to Gekoba or the nearest market and buy a black shoes, so long as it has laces as it is required, and the child can continue with the learning. So in my view, the policy is good, but we need to identify to make it simple, easy, and achievable. With those few remarks, I want to support this motion, and again, I welcome the Wajohi Mixed Secondary School in the National Assembly.
Thank you. I now call upon the member for Bureti constituency, Honorable Kibet Kimingoi. No, he's not here. Okay, then I now call upon the Honorable Johanna Ngeno, member for Imurua Kedir Dikir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also getting this opportunity to weigh in on this particular motion. Madam Speaker, we must understand that education has to be accessible. It has to be cheap. It has to be something that each and every child, student in our society, Madam Speaker, achieves it or accesses it. Madam Speaker, remember the saying that education is an equalizer. Wherever you come from, whether you come from the poorest community, you come from the poorest family, you come from the most remotest area, you come from wherever, education, once you access, Madam Speaker, makes you equal to those other people. So, Madam Speaker, I believe the major introduction of this motion, and I wish this motion should go a long way in becoming even an amendment to a bill so that it can become law. Madam Speaker, I believe that when we talk about accessing education, when we talk about the free primary education, it has to be completely free. I'm sorry, Speaker, there has been change of guard. Mr. Speaker, I was saying, when we talk about the free primary education, it has to be free primary education, accessible and reachable and quality education. Mr. Speaker, we have, I think, among us the many issues that we have in our schools, so that most of the students, either pupils or students, drop out of school. And I've taken time to do my own assessment. Mr. Speaker, it is because of the payments which maybe the schools are demanding from the parents. That is one of the biggest cause of school dropouts. Mr. Speaker, as members of this House and as legislators and as representatives of the people, we must take time to ensure that we make education affordable and reachable and reduce the number of dropouts which are avoidable. Of course, Mr. Speaker, there are situations that make students drop out of schools which are unavoidable. But those which are avoidable, as in terms of the cost, in terms of what are we supposed to pay, Mr. Speaker, then we should take time as this House to ensure that we make it affordable and accessible to everybody. The introduction of 100% transition, Mr. Speaker, has gone a long way. But the major impediment are the payments that we're asking these people to do. Another issue, Mr. Speaker, the introduction of the JSS is also another opportunity, because we are reducing the number of years in the secondary school and bring them to primary. And the reason was cost. The major reason why we brought at least one class from secondary to primary is cost, so that parents will not incur the cost of a student traveling to a long distance school, or even buying uniforms and all those kind of stuff. Speaker, all these are geared towards reducing the cost of education. Mr. Speaker, this idea of uniforms, which of course the member Mushomba has brought as a motion, is a very vital issue, Mr. Speaker. I think we not only need to look at how should we standardize uniform. Mr. Speaker, I've heard members talking about the fact that uniforms normally make you look different from the rest, and so on and so forth. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to make our students feel that they are all uniform, they are all equal, so that some should not feel they are more inferior or superior than the rest. The reason why we introduce one uniform bus color was so that we make all the schools uniform, so that we can identify that this bus belongs to a school. The same way, we also need to standardize, and I fully support, let us standardize the school uniform. The only thing that should be different is the badge. Let every school come up with a badge. Just like you look at all the buses on the road, they are yellow. But the name of the school is what differentiates from the other. What is wrong with that? No school is feeling inferior. Even if the bus is long, the other one is short, but everybody will know this is a school bus. Let us standardize the uniform. Make them the same color. If it is short, if it is long trousers, make it just a standard. And let's move away from schools where from once used to be putting on shorts. That is primitive. Let us make our children feel beautiful and handsome with good trousers and good shirts. Speaker, I support fully. Let us have the same uniform. If it is sweaters, it should be one color. If it is shirts, it should be one color. If it is trousers, it should be one color. What is wrong with uniformity? Somebody saying that we need to have so many colors so that people look beautiful. They will still look beautiful. We are on ties, Speaker, and it is uniform that we should be on ties, uniform that we should be on suits, although it is not uniform that we have the same color. But look at the orderlies in the house, Mr. Speaker. They are all in one uniform. So why are we having our orderlies in the same attire? Speaker, I think I support fully this motion that we need to have a uniform set of standardized set of uniforms. Speaker, I know uniform also is help us to identify the students, so that even I remember when I was a student, I would wear my uniform up to home. And one of the reasons was to show people that I'm in school. Secondly, was also to show the badge that I had that belonged to Maseno High School. And Maseno High School at that time was the only national school. Speaker, we feel proud of that. We feel happy. But at the same time, uniforms are supposed to identify our children, so that even if you find a student at the bus stage may be stranded because of lack of money, you will know this one is a student. This is a pupil. And then you can help them to even pay for their transport home. It also helps to remove. Some people sometimes would want to do bad things to students. But if they are not in uniform, Speaker, they can do bad things. But if they're in uniform, of course, the society will protect those particular students. Speaker, lastly, I want to weigh in on the issue of the payments which we are normally doing on schools. Remember, Speaker, I've had a lot of running barrels with most of especially the Ministry of Education and, of course, the TSC. And my major concern, Mr. Speaker, is the payments we are making to these day secondary schools, and even the new introduction of the JSS, junior secondary schools. We have seen most of the principals are asking students to come with lots of money. Speaker, the reason why we removed, we did what we call free day secondary education, was so that we can make our children access education. There are so many parents who cannot pay for boarding schools, who cannot pay for the schools which are very far. The reason why we introduce the day secondary schools and closely to the primary schools and to the parents is so that those parents who cannot afford to pay fees can send their children to those particular schools. But many schools are introducing so many other activities. One of them is this uniform. And I'm thinking, Mr. Speaker, that I'm requesting even the member to ensure that we introduce in the capitation, the whatever for capitation, Mr. Speaker, so that we budget it in the provisions of that amount that is being sent to every school. We include uniform as part of those capitation. We include school feeding program. Because in my constituency, Speaker, we are paying millions of money that goes towards food. Mr. Speaker, even for the students who come around that school, people who can move and come back, go for lunch, come back, people who can pack their lunch, even if they are coming from far, parents can pack them lunch. But Mr. Speaker, the school has introduced it as a compulsory payment, so that when you don't pay for food, you are sent home for 3 weeks. Why would you send my student for 3 weeks? Because of failure to pay fee for food. Mr. Speaker, I think the principal should introduce what we call meal cards, so that in case a student is unable. But most importantly, we should, as a house, introduce a payment of school feeding program, so that the schools and the parents who cannot afford to pay fees can access the feeding program through the appropriation, through the budgeting in this house. Same case with the uniform, and same case with this idea of remedial. Mr. Speaker, I really, those a few days ago in my schools and opted to ask for principals not to demand for remedial or send a student home because of failure to pay remedial. Speaker, remedial should be optional. If a student is able to pay, allow them to stay in school. If they are not able to pay, let them not come for the extra classes, but come for the classes where the government has paid for. You cannot send a student home because of failure to pay remedial.
Very well. Members, let me acknowledge the presence of St. Anne's Gitura girls from Gichugu constituency, Kirinyaga County, as a school that is within the Speaker's gallery as we debate this motion on school uniforms. Next to speak on this is Honorable Kimani Molo constituency.
Asante sana mstahiki Speaker kwa kunipa nafasi hii. Nitajaribu kuzungumza kwa mara ya kwanza kwa lugha ya Kiswahili na natumai kwamba sitafeli. Mstahiki Speaker, ningeanza kwa kumpa kondole mbunge wa Githunguri Mheshimiwa Gathoni wa Mushomba kwa sababu ya kuwafikiria wanafunzi wetu katika shule zetu. Mstahiki Speaker, wakati tunasema ya kwamba masomo ni bure, tunasema uongo. Wakati tunasema ya kwamba masomo ya day ama ile shule za kila siku ni bure, hakuna karo unalipwa, hiyo ni uongo. Tunaposema ya kwamba inawezekana kupeleka mashule yetu ya mabweni kwa yule mzazi wa hali ya chini, jibu ni kwamba ni uongo. Mstahiki Speaker, niliweza kuangalia kwa sababu wakati nilikuwa kule mashinani Molo siku ya Jumapili, nilipatana na mama moja ambaye anauza soko pale Molo. Na huyo mama mtoto wake alikuwa ameitwa shule moja ya upili ya Butere Girls kule Karoki Girls kule Kirinyaga. Mstahiki Speaker, yule mama alikuwa na risiti ya kwamba yeye ameweza kulipa karo ya shilingi 20,000. Lakini juu ya kulipa karo ya shilingi 20,000 alihitajika kulipa pesa zingine shilingi 20,150. Kama yale mambo ambayo bidhaa ambazo alikuwa zinahitajika pale shuleni, lakini ambazo alishurutishwa asinunue mahali kwingine, lazima azinunue pale shuleni. Mheshimiwa Speaker, huyu mama ametia bidii kwa yule mama ambaye anauza pale nyanya soko kuweza kuweka shilingi 20,000 ya kwamba apeleke mtoto shule. Hiyo ni juhudi kubwa sana. Na kwa hivyo wakati niambia mimi nimelipa school fees, nimelipa karo, nikamwambia uliapply bursary. Akaniambia lakini bursary haitaweza kulipa haya mahitaji mengine ambayo nahitajika. Kwa hivyo msaiki speaker, ilibidi nitafute hela zangu kibinafsi niweze kumlipia ili aweze kusoma. Na nafurahi kwamba huyo msichana ameweza maisha yake ya kidato cha kwanza katika ile shule ya Karoke Girls kule Kirinyaga. Ikanifanya nianze kufikiria hizi 20,000 ambazo tulikuwa tunaitishwa ni za nini? Mheshimiwa Speaker, ukienda sokoni shati ya shule ni shilingi 350. Shati hilo ukienda kuinunua kwa shule ni shilingi 800. Wanaongeza shilingi 450 mara 3 ya zile pesa ambazo hiyo shati inatoka huku nje. Ile trouser ama ile long isitoje kwa Kiswahili, ukinunua huku nje ni shilingi 700. Shule mingi wanauza shilingi 1500. Ile sweater ukinunua kwa duka ni shilingi 750. Mashule yanauza shilingi 1500, mara 2 ya hiyo bei ya hiyo sweater ukinunua huku nje. Tai ya kawaida tu shilingi ukinunua kwa soko shilingi 150. Ukienda kununua kwa shule shilingi 300 hiyo tai. Tena wanasema wanunue ile inaitwa tracksuit, quote and quote tracksuit. Ukinunua dukani shilingi 1300. Ukienda kuinunua kule kwa shule wanauza katikati ya shilingi 2000 na shilingi 3000. Godoro la kulalia ukinunua kwa duka shilingi 1800. Mashule yetu yanaitisha pesa wazazi kununua ile mattress ambayo inakuwa hata ni ndogo kuliko hii ya shilingi 1800 na wanaitisha shilingi 2800. Ingine inaitwa jumper, ile sweater ingine ile ya mtumba hata utaipata na shilingi 200. Lakini kule kwa shule wanaitisha shilingi 2500. Blanketi ukinunua kwa soko ni shilingi 500. Ukienda kununua kwa shule wanaitisha katikati ya shilingi 700 na shilingi 1000. Yale bed sheet, ile shuka ya kutandika kitandani, duka shilingi 600, kule kwa shule shilingi 1000. Pillow ya kulalia ukinunua kwa soko ni shilingi 150. Mashule yetu inaitisha katikati ya shilingi 300 na shilingi 500. Na hakuna tofauti ya ile pillow ambayo iko katika soko na ile ambayo inaitishwa na walimu wetu katika mashule. Bucket ya kubebea tu maji ama ya kusafisha nguo kwa soko shilingi 150. Shuleni katikati ya shilingi 300 na shilingi katikati ya shilingi 300 na shilingi 500. Zile socks ukinunua kwa duka katikati ya shilingi 50 na shilingi 100. Walimu wanaitisha katikati ya shilingi 200 na shilingi 500. Juu ya hayo wanakuambia baada ya kulipa haya yote lazima ulipe katikati ya shilingi 500 na shilingi 1000 kuweka label katika zile uniform. Kwa hivyo kama tunataka mtoto wa Mkenya yote aweze kwenda shuleni, aweze kusoma na kufaulu katika maisha, juu ya kuhakikisha kwamba tumeongeza ile pesa tunaita ya capitation katika mashule zetu, lazima tupeane suluhu ya uniform ama sare za shule na haya mambo mengine yote ambayo yanahitajika katika shule zetu. Na njia sahihi kabisa ya kufanya hivyo ni kuhakikisha kwamba uniform ama sare zote za shule zote za umma katika nchi yetu za Kenya ziwe sawa. Ikuwe shati ni tuseme rangi ya nyeupe, kama ni trouser ikuwe ni ya rangi kama ya nyeusi ama ya grey, standard kiasi moja katika nchi yote. Na hivyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, tutakuwa tumesaidia kupunguza gharama ya shule, na juu ya hayo tuhakikisha kwamba yule fundi ambaye yuko pale Mukinyai, ambaye yuko pale Kapsinandet, ambaye yuko pale Chandera, ambaye yuko pale Yaremi, ambaye yuko pale Kapsita, anaweza kushona hizo sare na akaweza kusomesha watoto wake na kuweka chakula katika meza ya watoto wake. Kwa sababu Mheshimiwa Speaker, tumekuwa tukitengeneza sheria ambazo ni za tu kuhakikisha kwamba wale mabonyenye ndio tu anaweza kunufaika kutokana na hizo sheria. Kwa mfano tunaposema ya kwamba ukiangalia katika hata shule zetu, hata zile ambazo ziko mbali na mahali kwingine, unapoambiwa hii ndio barua ya kuingia shule, unaambiwa na hizi uniform lazima ununue kwa maduka fulani. Sio ya kwamba haya maduka mengine hayana hizo sare, sio ya kwamba bei yao ni mzuri kuliko hizo zingine, lakini unasurutishwa vile sababu kuna ile agano mwalimu amefanya na yule na hilo duka liko hapa. Na unapata haya maduka Mr. Speaker hayana kitu kubwa, ni vile tu wao ni mwanyenye wameweza kujikimu kimaisha, na ndio unapata wale ambao wako na hela katika nchi wanaendelea kupata zaidi, wale ambao hawana wanaendelea kukosa zaidi. Kwa hivyo Mstahiki Spika, kuna wale ambao waliongea hapa awali wakasema basi kama sare zote zitakuwa sawa, pengine hakutakuwa na maridadi. Na mimi nakumbuka yule ambaye alikuwa Matiang'i alikuwa na makosa mingi sana, alifanya mambo mengi mabaya, lakini kama kuna jambo moja alifanya nzuri ni kusema ya kwamba basi zote za nchi yetu ya Kenya zikuwe na rangi moja, za mashule, basi zote za mashule zikuwe na rangi moja. Unakumbuka yule ambaye alikuwa waziri wetu wa uchukuzi, may he rest in peace, ama apumzike kwa amani, Mheshimiwa Mishuki, akasema ya kwamba wale ambao ni madereva na makanga wa magari zetu wavae sare moja, wengine zile za maroon, sijui maroon tutaje kwa Kiswahili, na wale wengine ya blue kwa madereva. Na hivyo kuhakikisha kwamba wao wote unaweza ukienda kwa eneo lolote la uchukuzi katika nchi yetu, utaweza kujua huyu ni dereva, utaweza kujua huyu ni makanga. Na pia kwa zile kununua hizo sare, unaweza kuzinunua mahali popote katika nchi yetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, hili ambalo tunapendekeza hapa limewezekana katika mashule yetu ya kufunza elimu ya matibabu. Asante Mheshimiwa. Mambo ya matibabu ile tunaita KMTC kwa kimombo. Kwa sababu yule msichana ambaye ama mvulana ambaye anasomea KMTC ya Molo, na yule ambaye kwa KMTC ya Kitui, na yule ambaye kwa KMTC ya Kisumu, na yule ambaye ako ya Mombasa, ya Lamu, kila mahali wako na sare moja. Kama basi inawezekana hivyo kwa shule zetu za matibabu KMTC, mbona isiwezekane kwa shule yetu ya upili na kwa shule yetu ya msingi katika Jamhuri yetu ya Kenya? Inawezekana. Lakini hapa Mheshimiwa, tukubali ya kwamba haitakuwa jambo rahisi, kwa sababu tukienda kupitisha hii itakatazwa kwa njia kubwa sana. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiongea kule, lazima pia nizungumzie mambo ya vitabu ambavyo vinapelekwa katika mashule yetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tunasema tunanunua vitabu vyote katika mashule yetu hasa ya upili, lakini unaitisha lazima wanunue ile Biblia, lazima wanunue sijui ile dictionary na kamusi na mengine. Hivyo vitabu peke yake ni shilingi 1500. Kama tunaweza kununua hivi vitabu vingine vyote, vinakuwa hadi shule zingine ziko na vitabu zaidi ambazo wanahitaji. Mbona basi tusinunue pia hizi tuweze kupea wanafunzi wetu, ili huyo mtoto wa maskini katika nchi yetu ya Kenya awe na nafasi sawa ya kusoma na kufaulu katika maisha kama yule watajiri. Na kushukuru Mstahiki Spika.
Very well spoken. Honorable members, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our guests seated in the speakers gallery, students from Pioneer Girls School, Gatanga constituency, Murang'a County. You are welcome to follow proceedings in the National Assembly. At this moment, as you can see, we are focusing on school uniform. You're welcome to the National Assembly. The Honorable Omboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. School uniforms. Let me thank Honorable Mushomba for bringing this. I also took my time and talked to her. And indeed, it has come at the appropriate time, given that there's a gap in existence in our schooling system, and more so to do with school uniform, and specifically the cost of school uniform. And that's what brings to bear all this. But then it gives us a chance to look at the school uniform broadly in our schools, so that we may make some amends that can actually make schooling to be accessible. So maybe to begin this properly is to go to what laws are governing education. And I would quickly go to the Constitution, Article 53, which describes education in Kenya as a right to all children. And therefore, all children, as per Article 53, are supposed to have free and compulsory education in Kenya. And that then aligns education as a function of the government. And that is why at one time when education was to be devolved, we who were in the education sector at that particular time and now, we completely refused that education should not be devolved, because it's supposed to be a right of the children. Meaning then that this must be funded basically by the government. Yesterday, we were talking about the junior second school education, in which we were actually confronted with the same thing of who should pay for the cost of education in this country, given that it is a right to all the children of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, then I would quickly go to the SDG 4, which defines education as a lifelong for all the children and prefers that the first thing we should achieve in education is access. That are children able to access education? That's what we go for first. Once they have accessed, then we look at the other components or tenets of quality and so on and so forth. So anything, Honorable Speaker, that hinders a child from reaching school is actually a barrier and must be removed. And that barrier, therefore, must be removed by those who have been assigned the task of providing education in Kenya, and that is the government of Kenya. Therefore, currently as we speak, Honorable Speaker, school uniform is part of the barriers to access to education. And I think that is why this parliament this morning is speaking about it, because we have to remove all the barriers that are limiting students to access school, especially the poor students from the villages and families. What is the history of school uniform? School uniform can be traced back, Honorable Speaker, to England, where poor students were taken by the church and taken to a school called the Christian boarding school. And they were given some sort of uniform which was close to that which the clergy were wearing. And I think that's where the history of school uniform sprang off. It went to America and later on arrived in Kenya with colonization. Have we done any studies on school uniform? Yes. The African Journal undertook the specific study of school uniform, and the case study was in Langata, and they produced about 14 good reasons why school uniform should be there. Who are the leaders who have pronounced themselves on school uniform, Honorable Speaker, in Kenya? You should quickly trace Mutula Kilonzo, the then Minister of Education, who appeared in the press with skirts, and I think the cartoon of that moment cartooned him trying to wear the standard skirt that children should wear. Hon Muchomba, I think you should listen to this, standardization, because he thought there must be a certain length of the skirt and blouse and so on and so forth. The other leader, Honorable Speaker, who pronounced himself on school uniform is Mwai Kibaki, when he was the president, and he actually ordered that all schools must be in a certain uniform. So that is our history of school uniform. What I would wish to say about this matter is that we need to look at the word standardization, so that standardization should not be mistaken for color. Standardization should not be simply the quality of what you will be bringing to the schools to wear. But this standardization has a lot to do with the price of school uniform in our schools, because it is a barrier to education and therefore must be dealt with. So if we can standardize the price of school uniform, then we are sorting out this gap that has been created. If we can liberalize, again we have to look at how Kenyan economy is operating, that our economy is supposed to be free and liberal. And therefore, as we standardize, we cannot afford to give this to only a group of people, but we possibly should allow free market of uniform, so that the uniform price is controlled by free market, demand and supply. In that way, it will be easy for the uniform to actually get its level price. The other alternative would be to follow the route of government, because it's the business of government making sure that all students are in school to actually provide school uniform. And this is possible, so that within capitation, and I heard one member speak on this, that was great, Honorable Speaker, that within the capitation we are sending to school, there's a certain amount of money specifically for uniform, and that uniform is of a particular standard in terms of quality and price, so that no student in Kenya will be chased out of school because of school uniform. In fact, this thing is also embarrassing my teachers, because you can see members addressing teachers as though they are the ones who determine school uniforms in school, which is wrong. School uniform is determined by the boards of management, is also determined by PTA, and in the presence of the teachers. What has happened, Honorable Speaker, even if this may not amuse you, is that the education system has been abandoned to teachers completely, and nobody wants to take responsibility. He only wants to say something wrong is happening in our schools, that there's no food in the schools. But no government agency is speaking itself to say we should have supplied food. We should have dealt with uniform. We should have supplied the teachers for junior secondary. How can a government which within the Constitution is supposed to provide free and compulsory education send one teacher to teach a whole class of junior secondary, disregarding what I call curriculum-based establishment and saying everything is good? And when the teachers go ahead and hire certain teachers who are paid on BOM, others are paid by PTA, and some money is charged there, then we say the teachers are the problem. We really must deal with the matter of school uniform alongside other challenges that are in the schools and decide whether, as a government, we want to prefer to invest in education or we want to invest in roads and railway and other buildings that otherwise are competing with the resources with education. My take would be that for us to develop the future, we must invest in our children. So let's provide school uniform as part of the requirements that are required to go to school. During the President Moi time, there was something in schools called cost sharing. And I think where we are now, honorable members and honorable speaker, is that we don't have free and compulsory education in Kenya. But what we are having is cost sharing. And if there's cost sharing and we cannot speak on it, then it means that we are not taking our responsibility. So it's high time that we declare that education is cost shared and we know which part the parent is playing and which part the government is playing. But as per what we require in law, let school uniform be provided for by the government. Let's remove all barriers that may hinder access to education. Honorable Speaker, that's my submission. Thank you for this chance.
Very well, Honorable Mboko. Honorable members, I would like to give an opportunity to the Honorable Chege Njuguna, who will be making his maiden speech as he contributes to this important motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my maiden speech in this assembly. Madam Speaker, I'm compelled to begin by thanking all who made it possible for me to get to this moment. The great Winston Churchill said that without victory, there is no survival. Madam Speaker, indeed, I'm here after having survived in the muddy trains of the politics of our time. Indeed, Madam Speaker, it was blood, toil, tears, and sweat. I was not the lone man in the battlefield, though, Madam Speaker, several people held my hand. Madam Speaker, I'm deeply humbled by the great trust and confidence that Kandara residents showed in me by electing me as a member of Parliament. Madam Speaker, I'm indebted to my constituency and profoundly grateful for this great honor. Madam Speaker, once Muranga's great son, the late Kenneth Matiba, may he rest in peace, affirmed that the people should be led to decide. Indeed, Madam Speaker, Kandara residents indeed decisively voted me in amidst the stiff opposition. Madam Speaker, I pledge to perform my legislative duties as pertains to the Constitution and that I shall not let them down. Madam Speaker, leadership should be people-driven and Kandara residents shall be the wind beneath which my duties shall be anchored on. Madam Speaker, I want to take this moment to thank my party, UDA, my party leader, His Excellency the President of Kenya, William RUTO, and all the UDA members who vigorously campaigned for me, leading to my eventual victory. I'm forever grateful. Madam Speaker, to my campaign team that withstood the tough season of campaign to the very end, leading to this very moment. I'm also very immensely grateful to them, not forgetting my family and friends who were there for me all through. Madam Speaker, to the Almighty God who has made everything beautiful in its time, I convey my immense gratitude. Madam Speaker, and my fellow honorable members, I'm humbled to know that I shall be standing on the shoulders of giants at a time when Kenyans are dealing with a lot of challenges. I believe, Madam Speaker, that we have what it takes to pass the bills that benefit the hustlers in this spirit of bottom-up economy policy. Madam Speaker, this Parliament takes over the reins during a critical time when Kenyans are grappling with increased cost of living. Madam Speaker, this surge in prices of basic commodities have been made worse by the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has resulted in disruption of the global supply chain. Madam Speaker, the ongoing drought has also brought in its wake decreased food production, which has threatened our food security. Madam Speaker, we must therefore be alive to these challenges that face all our nation. We therefore, Madam Speaker, have before us the task of exercising our duties in a way that uplifts the lives of all Kenyans. Madam Speaker, the President, in line with the UDA manifesto, has already introduced the fertilizer subsidies, which will bring down the cost of farming. Madam Speaker, the 50 billion hustler loan kitty to help the micro, small and medium enterprises to access cheap credit has already been dispersed. Madam Speaker, the affordable housing project will also benefit many Kenyans. Madam Speaker, I'm ready to join hands with the President in this August House to fulfill the President's agenda for Kenyans. To my constituency, those who have trusted in me, I tell them, my Kandara people, that in me they have a leader who has already been liaising with stakeholders to ensure I better the life roads of my people. Once more, Madam Speaker, I would like to thank them for giving me this chance to offer them selfish leadership that will be all about changing lives. Madam Speaker, I look forward to the days ahead with a lot of hope. May God bless you, may God bless this August House, and may God bless Kenya. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Kandara. The Honorable Beatrice Kemei, Member for Kericho.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to appreciate the mover of this motion, Honorable Member, who is my sister. I want to also say this is a motion that is affecting us as members of Parliament, affecting the parents, affecting the teachers, affecting everybody. I'm saying this because uniform is very important. First, I'm reminded of the days we were in school, and anybody who does not come with uniform is not part of the school. So for identification, uniform is key. And when we talk of standardizing, it is important in the sense that it will bring equality. It is an equalizer. We have schools in rural, we have schools in urban, we have schools that are day, we have schools that are boarding, we have public schools, we also have private schools. But when we standardize, it will bring equality. It will not be tied to performance. Madam Speaker, you look at national schools, ideally and naturally they perform because of the entry behavior. They perform better than the schools that are in the sub-county or in the extra county. And therefore, whenever they call for maybe drama or any other of these extracurricular activities, schools that come from the rural or even in the extra county or maybe in the sub-county, they feel inferior. So this uniform will bring equality. And in any case, when this uniform is standardized, Madam Speaker, it will also affect the pricing. What does this mean? You will realize that when the uniform is not standardized, the prices are actually different. Schools give different prices depending on the quality, depending on the color, depending on maybe where the uniform is bought. But if it is standardized, and then schools will be allowed, or students will be allowed to buy from anywhere, this will actually assist and help the parents who are not able to pay. CDF and of course NGAF give bursaries. And this one, students can learn in school, but there's no money for uniform. But if it is standardized, it means parents will be able to afford, at least for the students to be in school. And more so, Madam Speaker, I've also said it is important in this sense that the school will not be purchasing from one point. I imagine a student coming all the way from Kericho, where I come from, to purchase uniform in Nairobi. That is very expensive. Some don't even know where the shops are. But if it is standardized, they can buy from anywhere. So uniform demonstrates equality. And this will go hand in hand with having students feel wherever they are, they can perform the same way. During our days, the only colors that we knew were gray skirt, sky blue shirt or blouse for the girls. The sweaters were only different, maybe green and maybe brown or red, but for the boys the same. So that one, at least there was kind of equality. But at the moment, you will see different colors and different designs. I would also say with standardization, we will not be having girls wearing very tight skirts. That will also influence negatively in one way or another. And the boys, on the other hand, have also tried to make their trousers tubed or very tight. So this one is indeed bringing some negativity. But when it is standardized, at least they will be able to have the right size, the right length, the right color, color for that matter. So I am supporting this motion. And as we do this, we'll also have to remember that some students may not even afford this uniform and they may not go to school. So if the prices go down once more, I'm sure education will be an equalizer. So with that, I support and say, may that policy come very, very fast, and students will be on the safe side, the parents the same. We'll also have, to some point, look at the full dress code. Some schools, Madam Speaker, girls will have long hair, others very short hair, others no hair at all. I don't know what we can do so that others will not feel intimidated and they will not feel inferior. Uniform is important. If I may also add and say that as we look at uniform, let's also remember the design and even the weather. Some places are very cold. And if they are cold, then they will have the chambers and the warm uniform. Some places, like in the northern part, they may not need this. So as we standardize, let's also look into that. And with that, Madam Speaker, I support the motion and I say unity is key for the students. And then students will concentrate on their studies. It will also teach them some professionalism. They will look very smart and know that this is, from an early age, this is how to go about it. It will also ensure the safety of the students. Wherever they are, outside there, they will be safe, knowing that these are students when they have a uniform. Importance of standardization also is that it will ease peer pressure. Some students will feel like, I come from this school and then they feel lower or they feel inferior, while others feel better. So for all these reasons, including economic reasons, uniform and standardizing uniform is very, very important, not forgetting the sense of belongingness. The students will feel they belong to that category, and they belong to a school, and they belong to a country. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Basil, member for Yatta. The technical team, please try to trace the member for Yatta. You can move to the next.
Let me move this. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the chance. Thank you to the sponsors of the motion, Madam Honorable Wamuchomba, if I'm right. These are good motion, although we need to be specific on what we are standardizing, because for me, we need to standardize cost of the uniform. Currently, if you look at the uniform, there are schools which are charging more than the actual cost of the uniforms. This is actually adding more burden and actually barring many students from accessing education. I also want to say that we should not standardize color. If you standardize color, it will mean more burden for parents for you to be able to phase out all the uniforms. So let's try to focus on price, because currently many students are actually at home because the actual cost of uniform is denying them the chance to go to school. Another very important element which I want to put across, if the government is able to pay for free education in terms of providing other aspects of education, at the same time supporting KDF and other forces with the free uniforms, why can they not do the same for poor students? So perhaps it would be important to put a policy that is tasking the government to provide free uniforms for schools or for students across the country. Another important element which I thought could be nice to focus on standardization, maybe in the near future, we may also look at the design. I do remember when we were back in school, you could see a very huge variance when it comes to what students from poor backgrounds used to wear and what students from rich or the urbanites are wearing. And this is setting some form of discrimination when it comes to appearance, because the essence of having a standardized uniform is to bring homogeneity on education. And if this cannot be realized, then we may go the United States way, where you find students in the United States don't necessarily have to wear uniforms, particularly in the public schools. So this is something that we need to put it straight in the particular motion, which I think after a few revisions, we can put it as a bill. And then lastly, I think for the movers of the motion, personally, I'll be happy to make my inputs to the drafting of the bill and to be able to make sure that it resonates with the realities and the priorities of different areas that we represent across the country. Thank you, and happy to get that moment to contribute further. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Abdul Haro, member for Mandera South.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The poet Mark Twain said this on standardization: I don't see any use in having a uniform and arbitrary way of spelling words. We might as well make all clothes alike and cook all dishes alike. Sameness is tiresome, variety is pleasing. The Honorable Speaker, as you have heard from the contribution of honorable members, this motion is quite confusing. And the confusion is centered around whether the standardization is about having similar uniform for all schools in the country, or whether the standardization is about the cost of uniform. Honorable Speaker, I think if the idea is to have the burden on parents lessened in terms of cost, then we can propose to do two things as a country. Either we abolish uniform altogether and parents don't have any cost on uniform, or like other members have suggested, we put the cost of uniform in the capitation so that there is no uniform, the parents don't pay for any uniform at school. As we are now, every school has a uniform. And I think if we want it to remain like that, is a good thing. The only thing that we need to manage, the only thing that we need to deal with are those school principals and school heads who exploit parents, you know, in terms of trying to send them to their own manufacturers, or the school itself becoming a supplier of uniforms and making the cost of uniform very expensive for parents. Otherwise, trying to standardize the uniform we have, even if we talk about the texture, making uniform texture, I can tell you we have a beautiful country with quite a lot of variabilities in almost all our contexts. For example, a school in Limuru, which is a very cold context, and a school in Mandera, where I come from, which is a very hot context. If you say you're standardizing the fabric or the material, you may end up disadvantaging one. The material might not be helpful in a cold environment like Limuru, or it might not be useful in a hot environment like Mandera. So we don't need to become a country of standardization. You know, we standardize our curriculum, we standardize our exams. Now we want to standardize our uniform so that every school puts on the same uniform, same color. Or are we talking about standardizing when we talk of standardizing production? Are we talking about identifying one manufacturer who will be manufacturing uniform for all the schools in the country? I think that's not the right way to go, and that is why I don't support this motion, and because standardization will only make our educators become enforcement officers. We have a lot more other problems to deal with. Yesterday we debated about the junior secondary school year with all the challenges it is facing. Definitely standardization is not one of the priority challenges we have in education in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Member for Murang'a County, the Honorable Betty Maina.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I rise to support Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba in this motion. Madam Speaker, I will support, we standardize the color, the quality, and the cost. The only difference we can put is a logo as a way to identify the school. Among the very many benefits of identification, one being creating cohesion among students. When students are able to identify themselves with the same color, quality, there are no students who will feel as if they come from superior schools, where others will be feeling as if they come from inferior schools. When you talk about cost, one of the most tedious exercises for a parent is to take a student to school. But we are making the exercise more complicated by allowing some sort of business to go on in school, whereby you find that parents are referred to a particular shop with particular cost, and there is no room for negotiations or for bargaining. In these instances, parents are left like in day school, parents in day school are buying uniform more expensive than the school fees. We need to have a standardized way for having the cost of school uniform to reduce expenses that are not important. We are encouraging businesses in our schools. Of course, these tenders are given to particulars and with interest by the people who are giving them these tenders. Another importance we need to consider in standardizing the quality. There are some students, maybe because of being have-nots or being from less advantaged families, they will put on some low-quality uniform, and when they're in school, they will start comparing themselves with other students. We even really need to come up with a formula whereby the government needs to make sure that in every new year, or in every new year that the students are going to a new year, we need to be providing school uniform. Sometimes you go to school, you'll meet some students with very good quality, and in other schools, you'll meet some students with very torn clothes. These students feel rejected in school. They will suffer psychologically, they will suffer emotionally, they will even feel that they are lesser students. So we need to have a way of making sure that everybody in school feels the same. I support Mheshimiwa Gathoni wa Muchomba in this, and I say that dress code promotes equality, dress code promotes equity, and dress code promotes cohesion. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Very much, member for Muranga. The Honorable Victor Koech, member for Chepalungu.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for this particular opportunity once again to contribute to the motion by Honorable Wamuchomba on the standardization of school uniform. Madam Speaker, we are all aware about the program that the Kenya Kwanza government or the other government is striving on of having 100% transition to JSS and 100% transition to Form 1. This can only be realized if we all agree here today that standardization of school uniform is necessary because it's actually becoming an obstacle or a barrier to the realization of the same. Madam Speaker, do you realize that within my constituency, a number of schools, children that are performed, one that had 404 marks, having actually been sponsored by a donor, is missing out to report to a national school simply because the parents cannot be able to raise the required amount for school uniform. This, Madam Speaker, will only come to an end if we standardize the school uniform as said by the mover of the motion, Honorable Wamuchomba. Madam Speaker, we want to absolutely see nothing wrong in all the school wearing the same school uniform. Look at the police units in the entire country. They wear the same uniform and no one is complaining about them. They are all looking handsome and the ladies are looking beautiful. Look at the KMTC students, Madam Speaker. They are all looking again handsome and looking beautiful in their school uniform. And the school uniform is the same. From the coastal region to the western region, for KMTC students, the school uniform is the same. There is absolutely nothing if we say that all the secondary school, all the junior secondary school, to wear the same uniform. There is absolutely nothing. If anything, it is going to bring uniformity and equality. Look at a scenario where an high school is known to perform so well. So to say, Madam Speaker, they normally earn, quote unquote, respect from the society. And compared to a school that is known to perform dismally, the same, Madam Speaker, they attract an equal opposite measure of not earning the same respect as the schools that are performing well. To bring this to an end, Madam Speaker, we need to standardize and have the same color throughout the country so our children, our learners can be seen to wear the same uniform and to appear the same. Madam Speaker, as I contribute to this particular motion, the issue of pricing is becoming a menace in the country. You find a school within my constituency that is actually asking for a fee amounting to around 40,000 for only school uniform. The school fees in this particular school is 26,000 per term. Now you ask yourself, which one should be more expensive? Is it the school uniform or the school fees? And this is the reason why we want to support this motion from Honorable Wamuchomba, so our children can be able to access the said equalizer, which is education. Madam Speaker, as I contribute to this motion, once again, I want to to speak into the final item on the table today. Parents, and Honorable Amuchamba should include this, parents should be allowed to buy school uniform wherever they need to buy. They should not be forced into buying school uniform from a certain vendor who is known only to the school. This will only mean that the parents are being milked actually by the school principals who are greedy actually to earn the sweats from the parents who are so innocent. With the above remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to contribute and to entirely support this particular motion. And when it comes to the bill, we will be more than willing to make our contribution and to make sure that all the concerns from our people that we represent are put into consideration. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, and I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Rahim Dawood, member for North Imenti.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to first support the standardization and production of school uniforms. Madam Speaker, uniforms are a very emotive issue in the sense that many schools have got different uniforms. So we need now to have one standard uniform and one color, hopefully, because what happens is you see checked uniform, like I have seen the school which is in the speaker's gallery. They have got checked uniform, you know, and all different colors. You can see sometimes it's purple, sometimes it's brown and white, and so many colors. Madam Speaker, we need to have one standard uniform for each and every school in this country, whether it's private or public. And Madam Speaker, the uniform should not be expensive. If it is possible, the government to provide uniforms to students would be the best thing to be done, because we've got industries in this country which can produce the uniforms. We've got even our export processing zone, which export even clothes and everything. They can do it. We have got Rivertex, we've got, you know, we can revive Mountex in Nyanyuki and all those, so that they can be producing uniforms on a large scale. If the government would not provide, then schools would be advised to buy from there, so that we can have one uniform for each and every school, and it would be cheaper. Because what is happening, Madam Speaker, with even the JSS, I do not understand. If you are in the same school, why would you need a new uniform from standards from grade 6 to 7, and you are in the same school that you now have to change? Many children or students have not even reported to grade 7 because they cannot afford to buy the uniform. Many a time, Madam Speaker, you find children have been sent home even in the lower grades because they do not have a uniform. And I do not understand the correlation of uniform with studies, because what matters is what you are going to be taught and not what you are wearing. Yes, uniforms will be there, but people who have not come with uniform, they should never be chased away from school, because at the end of the day, the students who will not have a uniform, if they stay at home, who is it assisting? Nobody will be assisted with whatever is being done. So, Madam Speaker, we need a good policy where we have a uniform which is probably, we can see where to source it, but let the parent not pay exorbitant for the uniforms, where I remember in the junior secondary, they were paying about 20,000 shillings just for uniform. Whereas when they're in standard 8 or 7, even to pay for the school meals, it's a challenge for many parents, who even students have to go home for only 300 or 500 shillings, and they cannot be in class because of 500. So how are they going to pay 20,000 for that uniform? We need to see how Mheshimiwa Gathoni should see how the government will subsidize the uniform, and parents would pay a standardized fee, which probably would be included in the fees, so that we do not have to, the parents do not have to fork out a lot of money. Madam Speaker, as well as we need to see, there are schools which have got different forms of uniform, like jackets, which cost a lot of money. So we need to do away with those kind of jackets. We need to do away with a lot of frilly things which are not necessary, because at the end of the day, it is the studies which matter and not the uniform. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Thaddeus Zambia, member for Kilome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Madam Mshomba, the motion is very good, but we have to be a bit specific on the issues to do with the uniforms, whether it is quality, quantity, and all that. Madam Speaker, in my view, right now, in the morning, I had a student who was reporting to a secondary school. The uniform is more than the fee which she was supposed to pay. So first of all, I would suggest that let the government first come up with a policy where, as they speak of free secondary education, they factor in the uniforms. Madam Speaker, where I am sitting, I'm trying to review. Last year, for the last 5, 6, 7 years, the government was able to provide free textbooks. It was done from one central point where the business people who are booksellers, those people who have bookshops, were robbed of their businesses because it was like single sourcing. So where I am, Madam Speaker, Honorable Muchomba, I think there is nothing sinister in this motion about if we pass it, the government probably might single source one person to supply uniforms to this nation, to the students of this country. So, as we discuss about this motion, I would suggest that let the government provide free uniform and ensure that at the sub-county level, that is in our constituencies, they identify the tailors from the grassroots, they be provided with materials to make the clothes, the uniform for our students. Through that, I think we'll be able to get it very clear that nobody will think of single sourcing for uniforms for our students. The other bit is that we should consider capping the pricing of the uniforms. There are some schools who are exorbitantly charging the uniforms and disadvantaging the students and the parents. I can quote one example in my constituency where you are supposed to collect the uniforms from the school. It's a mandatory. And the costs are over 15,000. When you can access the same quality uniform from the local market with at least 5,000. So we need to review and get into details about standardization of uniforms for our students. Madam Speaker, the issue of uniform being free is very possible. If you check now, we are talking of free secondary and primary education, and you find that the parents are parting with a lot of money to buy other accessories like writing materials, buying uniform, and all that. So I think we should review the issue of free. When you talk of free, let the government provide everything. Madam Speaker, Madam Muchomba, being the mover of this motion, I think we'll sit down and have some discussion on it as we try to draft a bill so that it can be adopted to help the people of this republic. Madam Speaker, having noted that, though it is not part of this motion, let us, members of parliament, push for the CDF money to be released so that we can assist our parents in paying their school fees. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Kilome. Honorable members, help me to appreciate students from Daragwa Girls, from Daragwa constituency in Nyandarua County, seated at the Speaker's Gallery. You are most welcome to the National Assembly. Honorable member, the next opportunity goes to the Honorable John Waweru, member for Dagoretti. Dagoretti South.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for this opportunity. And it would be sacrilegious of me to start by not congratulating the Honorable Gathoni Wamboshomba, the very hard-working member of parliament from Githongori. Githongori might not be too near Dagoretti, but we are hearing the work that is happening in Githongori. We are challenged, we are inspired, and Honorable Gathoni, you are doing good for women leadership in this country. Beyond that, the people of Githongori need to appreciate that you are a good representative in the House. This is not your first motion, Honorable Gathoni, and we want to congratulate you for such a thoughtful motion that you have presented before this House. Honorable Speaker, me and you were in class at the same time in university. And among the many things that we learned was the history of education. And when we studied the history of education, we were able to appreciate the need for school uniform and how it came to be that students wear school uniform. One of the reasons was, of course, standardization. The other one was identification. But more importantly is the effect of the war effort on standardizing industries. Madam Speaker, back then, earlier on in the last century, young students were being prepared for the market that was available then. And back then, we were going under the industrialization revolution. At that time, we were talking about the coming of what you call a production line that was standardizing the operations in a factory. Madam Speaker, it's a century later, and we still have a debate on uniforms, Madam Speaker. Uniforms do bring pride in belonging. They also institute discipline among the wearers of these uniforms. But now, Madam Speaker, we have gotten to a point where uniforms have become a tool for magnifying the class divide, not only in schools, but also in a republic, Madam Speaker. Especially in a republic like Kenya, where the divide between the public schools and the private schools is too big. Madam Speaker, you have just recognized some students who are sitting in the Speaker's gallery. And I see them wearing school uniform, Madam Speaker. One day, it was an afternoon in 1987. I was much younger than the students who are sitting in the gallery today. I had been picked up, Madam Speaker, as one of the 4 students who were going to represent Kileleshwa Primary School in a program called Junior Quiz. They would take the brightest students who would go and take a quiz on TV, and they were supposed to represent our division then. Back then, we were not in Dagoretti, we were in Westlands Division. And on the day I was supposed to go to the studio, Madam Speaker, it was recognized by the teacher that the pants I was wearing, the school shorts I was wearing, could not go to the studio, Madam Speaker, because I had 2 big eyes on my behind, Madam Speaker. The short that I was wearing was long, tired, it was long torn, it was long out of service. Because my parents could not afford to buy me another pair of pants, Madam Speaker. It was embarrassing. I remember we had to go to the house of a student who was living near. His name was Eddie Wanje. And wherever he is in this country, I have to thank Eddie Wanje because he was able to give me some pants that I was able to appear on TV. For the first time in my life, when I appeared on TV, I appeared in borrowed pants, Madam Speaker. But the point I'm making is that uniforms can actually be a tool for exaggerating the class divide among our students, Madam Speaker. You can imagine what a 9-year-old felt when they were told you cannot be admitted to studio in the pants you're wearing, knowing that it is not your fault. It is my parents who could not afford a new pair of shorts, and the embarrassment of having to go to a friend's house, change before you get onto the vehicle that was taking us to VOK, then the KBC studios. Madam Speaker, the standardization and production of uniforms is a debate that is timely. To my mind, Madam Speaker, if we could get to a level where the Ministry of Education rationalizes school uniform, each and every constituency in Kenya, 290 of them, can be able to put up a factory in their constituency. That factory will be constituency run. It will be the parents of the students who are taking children to school who will be running this factory. Madam Speaker, organizations like churches, non-governmental institutions, our churches, Madam Speaker, we only use them one day in a week. The churches that we built, we spend millions and millions of shillings building brick and mortar of monumental buildings that are not used from Monday to Friday. What about, Madam Speaker, if we standardized our uniforms and the churches that have been empty from Monday to Friday accommodate our parents who are trained in stitch making, who are trained in uniform making, who are trained in garment making, who are trained in the science of fashion design and fabric design, Madam Speaker, and our parents become the people who stitch our school uniforms so that we bring down the cost of school uniform in our constituencies, Madam Speaker. Even more importantly, Madam Speaker, if an entire constituency was to make its own uniform, you can imagine the savings we would be making on the economies of scale, Madam Speaker. So much so that if we set up a factory in RUTO, in the Dagoretti South constituency, this factory is assured of a market of all the students in ECD, in primary school, in junior secondary, in high school, and even the institutions that are of tertiary learning in the Dagoretti South constituency. That would be a thriving industry for our school uniform makers, Madam Speaker. More importantly, it would lead to a search for new knowledge. Our universities would start on research to find out which fabrics work well for this country, which fabrics work well for what region, Madam Speaker, what fabrics are good for making school uniform, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the point I'm trying to make is that after the standardization and production of uniforms, the next thing the Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba needs to think about is the localization of the making of school uniforms, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to end it here by saying that the motion that has been brought by Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba is of such national importance that she cannot leave it here. Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba needs to think of how she's going to craft this into a bill that she presents to this House promptly. And Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba, do not mind the critiques that are coming from here and there. These critiques are bills that you can put on your bill that will come up now as a bill so that we make it an act and institute a law on standardizing and putting good production and localizing of school uniforms. Honorable Speaker, I would not want to add much more to that other than to say that this is an amazing motion and I support it wholeheartedly, and I look forward to the bill, Madam Speaker. And the only bill that I would like to put on my part is that I said that there is pride in belonging when we wear a school uniform. When we come to the bill, let us separate standardization of quality, standardization of price, and standardization of school uniforms to different schools. I'm very proud of my school uniform from Kileleshwa Primary. I'm extremely proud of my uniform #1 from Dagoretti High School. I would want it standardized, but I would not want it changed. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Very well spoken, the Honorable KJ. And thank you for taking the House through the memory lane. Honorable members, help me to appreciate, seated in the speakers gallery, we have students from Kyoto School, Dagoretti North Constituency, Nairobi. You are welcome to the National Assembly so that you may observe proceedings of the House. Honorable members, the next opportunity goes to Irene Njoki, aka Murembo, the Honorable Member for Bahati.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me start first by appreciating my colleague, Honorable Amoshomba, for coming up with this motion, which is so timely to us today. As a mother, I know why you came up with this. And as a member of parliament, I know why you came up with this motion. Madam Speaker, I know standardizing uniforms will actually save cost to our parents. Yesterday, I was at home or in my constituency, and I could see the agony that our parents are going through. CBC or grade 6 students have not been able to join fully because of uniform. And this issue of uniform has become, Madam Speaker, like a trading tool where our students are not able to join because of uniforms, because of desks. And I think when we standardize these uniforms, for sure, this will save costs to our parents. Madam Speaker, I want to say standardizing, and I want to support this motion that standardizing these uniforms will surely have a smooth transition to schools. And I go back to junior secondary schools. Madam Speaker, I always, and I'm asking myself this question, why do we have to request parents to buy uniforms for students transiting to grade 7, yet they had uniforms? Yet these parents are struggling. Why can't we just have the same uniform these students to wear so that they can just continue with their studies? So standardizing this uniform, I think, will actually take care of this gap so that our parents don't have to go back to their pockets to buy more uniform. Madam Speaker, we know uniforms are a sign of, gives our students equality. They give our students pride. They distinct our students. They distinct our children. We want to say that standardizing these uniforms actually will remove the barrier of making one school more superior than the other. We have seen, even when we go for competition, drama competitions, even when these children go for prize giving days or they go for galas, some schools feel superior than the others. Some students feel superior than the others. So standardizing these uniforms will actually ensure that we remove that barrier. Madam Speaker, I want to request our government, if possible, through the Ministry of Education or through Wamoshomba as she's coming up with this bill, we want to request that we implore our government to support our parents. Supporting our parents is, if we have free education, then we can have, or we can give our children free uniforms. And this will actually go a long way to our parents. You can see that some of the students, even when you try to support them, Madam Speaker, you pay bursary 4,000 shillings. But when it comes to uniform, the bill comes to 13,000. So which one is better? In fact, I wish the government could give that uniform instead of the parent going through paying 13,000 shillings. Yet, we are all here as representatives, and I support and I say, let the government assist our parents to at least get these uniforms for free. I want to also just point out to Honorable Amoshomba, maybe one thing that we need to point out or maybe to think seriously about is the issue of indiscipline, especially when these students go for galas or when they go for national functions, especially on how we are going to identify them to to at least avoid indiscipline. I know my colleagues have suggested maybe logos, we can do maybe different tiles or something different so that we are able to identify and to avoid indiscipline, because sometimes you can standardize and then when the students go, due to peer pressures and all that, they do funny things and you cannot be able to identify which school did that. Through promoting SMEs, Madam Speaker, I would request and I would suggest that we standardize these uniforms locally. Honorable KJ has actually indicated that we take these industries locally. But I was also put in and say, Madam Speaker, let us promote our SMEs. We know we have Hustler Fund. If we can be able to promote our own tailors. Madam Speaker, you can see that today I'm very smart. I don't need to be told I'm smart. I can tell I am smart because I have promoted my local SME. So if we can do the same, even through the Hustler Fund, I think we'll also be promoting our own businesses. We don't want to kill the giants, but we want to promote our own local people, and we can do this through providing or assisting them with financing to do these uniforms. Madam Speaker, I want to support this motion and I want to encourage my sister, Honorable Amoshomba, keep it up. You have touched many, you have touched the lives and you will be touching our constituents directly. Thank you for this opportunity and I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member for Bahati. Honorable members, I'll give this opportunity to the Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Member for Dagoretti North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. At the onset, I just want to thank, first of all, the Honorable, my chair, Wamushomba, and to also thank our students who have visited us from Kyoto School. I welcome you into Parliament. But more importantly, they come in at a time when we are talking about them and talking about their school uniform. But I want to appreciate they walked in dressed well, and we thank the school, we thank the teachers also. Madam Speaker, coming back to the motion, I just want to say this to Honorable Wamushomba. You come in at a time when I will give you a most sad story, that I paid school fees for a girl who is supposed to join a school in Kaaga. And the next thing the parent comes and says, the child cannot go to school because they don't have enough money to pay for that school uniform. And many, many others who are still in the constituency, you've paid the school fees, but they don't have money for this uniform. And to appreciate that even in the UK, in September 2022, the UK that is more advanced were talking about school uniforms for their children that has become very expensive. And they decided, I think they even passed in Parliament, that this many things that just brings a lot to parents, that they should leave their parents to walk into any school uniform and buy school uniform. Madam Speaker, when we go back to the days we went to school, our parents walked into any Kenya school uniform shop and were able to afford that uniform then. Today, the international schools are better off than our public schools, Madam Speaker, because they walk into a Kenya school uniform, you will find that uniform more affordable than a school uniform that is in a public school, where a parent, first of all, is told that the only place you can get the school uniform, especially when students have joined school and they've now left, now you're told where the tailor is, and that is where you have to go. And I'm saying this with an experience, Madam Speaker. Last year, just before the elections, I found a girl who was supposed to join Precious Blood, and I picked her. But more sadly, I had to go and look for the uniform. Now, today, Honorable Amushomba gives us an opportunity to look at this and ask ourselves, as citizens of this country, without bringing in the malice of business, the malice of profit, because I think where we went wrong is to decide education can be a profitable industry, and it has become so profitable, not just with the textbooks, not just with what, but we have to now question ourselves again that today, with the economy that we have, many parents cannot afford, many parents are unable, but the more important thing, look at our EPZs. Madam Speaker, we have 20%. It's a tax-free place. That 20% can be used to do uniforms, and then it is sent to schools, and now the school uniform is sold very cheaply to parents, and they'll be able to afford. Or we take our local tailors who we want to promote, let them go to some of these EPZs and be trained, so that when you do the seam, when you're looking at that school uniform, you'll appreciate that indeed it has been done neatly, and you'll be proud. So that indeed it has been done neatly, and you'll be proud. So that again, we don't put our children into a quagmire of where when they look at the uniform, they are wondering. Because if you want to bring equality to a child in school, and that is why uniform is very important, and that is why I support what my honorable member for Bahati has just said. Each school can retain their uniform for purposes of respect, their values, their discipline, because each school has its own discipline. And at that time, you'll be able to point out and know that is a school that has discipline, that is a school that needs help, and that is why their uniforms can remain the way they are, but with dignity. Every child can walk into that school with uniform. There's nothing as proud as when you carry a child who has just joined Form 1, and you look at the makeover of that child, from the uniform, from the clothes she or he walked in, Madam Speaker, and as she wears that uniform, she feels ownership of the school, she becomes proud of that school, and she will work hard to keep the name of the school. And therefore, as I finalize, Madam Speaker, I want to thank Honorable Mushomba and to say, let us not look at it again, I repeat, in a business. Let us not come and curtail it for the sake of others to gain. Let us make it that we are doing it for the prosperity of our children, for the prosperity of our parents in terms of affording, but to ensure each child in Kenya can walk into a school and be proud of her school, his school. Lastly, Madam Speaker, even as we speak, I know junior high school, let them have a new uniform. We have already told them they are joining junior high school. The best they could walk in is with even a trouser and a nice shirt, but it's because the parents can't afford. But I'll pray that we make sure they walk in understanding, I am walking into a junior high school. They'll be proud to remain in that school, but knowing they have moved at one level. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support, and I'm hoping that we will stand and we will have a bill that will clear the menace of school uniform being at a very costly price. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Member for Dagoretti. Honorable members, I would like to assure you that I've been observing the Honorable Gathoni wa Mushomba, and she has been taking notes to improve the possible bill that she'll be bringing to the House. Honorable members, the next opportunity goes to Richard Yegon, member for Bomet East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on this very important motion. Madam Speaker, as my colleagues have said earlier on, that this is a very important issue whereby we want, as Member of Parliament, to support and make sure that all the students in our schools have a dress code which can easily be distinct or differentiated from the other people when they just come out of school. This has been long overdue, and in fact, the only thing which I wanted also to add in is that the school uniform is has been very expensive when it comes to purchasing them. And this is because you find most of the schools, especially in my area, some areas whereby the they give out school uniform in schools. And this one, I would like to say, if the government chip in and do capitation on these issues of the school uniform, it is going to go a long way in helping most vulnerable parents or those who are not in a position to buy the school uniform, because most of these school uniform parents are directed to go to a certain shops where maybe there have been some collusion with some maybe teachers or so that at least they can get something as kickbacks by sending parents to a particular shop. And I want to say, if parents are given an opportunity to go and buy school uniform in a given, in whichever shop they feel like, so long as it is of the same material, the same color, and as required by the school, I think it is going to go a long way in helping our parents in not having a lot of being exploited. Again, this standardization is very important in the sense that it is again on the identification of our children. When they are going home, they can easily be identified and separated. I take a case whereby we, in a worst case scenario, where maybe police officers are sent to a raid or do some work in a certain village or another area, any area, students can easily be identified from other people instead of being taken into wrong hands or being blamed or being not identified as students. This issue of the school uniform help in identifying our children. Last but not least, Madam Speaker, I think I'm going to go out of this motion and try to bring something which is going on now. You see, the member for the leader of opposition, Raila Odinga, is making a meeting or making a rally here in the city. And you can see now, like the whole house is like empty. I think we have also to have put in place some measures whereby we say the issues of rallies and political rallies has to be capped on a particular date or timelines. We don't need to be coming from our election. And now we start again doing campaigns. I think we need, as the Honorable House, this Parliament has to look also and put in place mechanism whereby we say we don't have to do politics until such a particular time, so that we go to campaigns again. We cannot subject our people again. Look at the people, the businessmen in this great city. They are subjected to a lot of losses because maybe they are afraid of eventualities of chaos. So we need to look into this. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I want to say I support this motion.
Very well, member for Bomet. I thought that you are going to say that when people are demonstrating, they also need to wear uniform so that they can be identified. Anyway, honorable members, the next opportunity goes to Honorable Joseph Denar, nominated member.
Madam Speaker, I will want to make my comments. First, on the issue of the uniform, I think it's something that I really would recommend. First is on the issue of standardization, that we should be able to create a standard for every student, just like what has created standardization on the buses now. At least some times ago you wouldn't know this bus is for school or this bus, where is it going? But now the yellow color has created that. Two, it is on the issue of the equality. Where we come from, there's so much poverty. And I think most of the time we were trying to do a project for all the kids to have a uniform. So I would really support that. Two, on the economics of scale. As much as we buy, the more we will reduce prices. And the more we reduce prices, is the more we will be able to afford. So I'm supporting, and I really want to acknowledge Madam Machonga for that, and I think those are my comments. Thank you.
Well spoken, nominated member. Honorable members, the next opportunity goes to the Honorable Bishop Kosgei, nominated member.
Madam Speaker, on the onset, I want to congratulate the Member of Parliament, Gathoni wa Mashomba, for introducing this motion. This is not only important but timely. Number one, we cannot overemphasize the purpose of having uniform for our children, because the same has been dealt with since morning. But I think this motion is so important because it is speaking to two important areas in accessibility to education in this country. Number one is that it is speaking to affordability, that we must make uniform and guarantee the children of this country that school uniform is affordable to every child in this country. Secondly, we must have convenience, that it must be convenient for every child in this country and for every parent to be able to give and buy uniform for their children. Therefore, as we speak to this motion, we should separate few things from one to another. Whether the issues of color is not an issue here. I think the issue of color has been so diverse and has been so impressive, and many people are having it with nostalgia when you speak about the school and the color of your own school. So it's about identity. But I think the two most important is affordability and conveniency. So I think we guarantee that when this motion matures to a bill, we guarantee you, through you, Madam Chair, that we will support, I will support the act that will be put forward in the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bishop. Honorable members, the next opportunity goes to Honorable Nicholas Gikolong, the member for Turkana East.
I thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to add my voice on this motion. Madam Speaker, I rise to oppose this motion because of the following reasons. Madam Speaker, our education sector has a lot of things for us as members of parliament to discuss and find a way of helping those problems to make our schools to develop. Like now, instead of the uniform, we need to talk about infrastructure. We need to talk about the teachers' shortage in schools. We need to talk about school fees and also the cost of this uniform, instead of talking the texture, color, and all this. Madam Speaker, just a few minutes ago, you just announced that there are some students from two schools from the correct constituency in the Speaker's Gallery. And as we started looking up there to identify those two schools, those schools were identified by their uniform. If the uniform it was one, how can we know which school are we talking about? Or are you going to tell the House there are two schools up there at the Speaker's Gallery? So the school uniform is meant for identity. Every school is identified by the uniform. And when we say we have one uniform for our schools, what are we talking about? There was a comparison somebody gave about the school uniform and the police uniform. The police uniform, they are identified by the under one name, the National Police Service. But our schools, there are many. How can we compare those two uniforms that we have a general uniform for our schools and we compare it with the police uniform? Unless we want to say we want to make our schools to have one name. Maybe our primary schools and secondary schools, which it cannot be possible. So I oppose this, and instead of us talking about the issue of texture, the color, let's talk about the cost of uniform in our schools, so that parents can get uniform at a low cost. Because when we talk about this uniform, we don't give uniforms to the parents. We buy uniforms. And business community control the prices of commodities they sell. So when we talk about it, saying about the price and all that, how are we going to are we going to have some land somewhere for us to plant cotton so that we can get in for our own cotton to have for this school uniform? No. The farmers, they will determine how they will sell those textiles to the business community, and they are going to sell it at their own way they want to sell it. I don't know even if we can control it. Madam Speaker, there's issue of some schools. They are proud of their uniform, especially in my county, where I come from, Turkana County. There's one of the national schools called Turkana Girls. Turkana Girls, they are known and they have been given a name, the Green Angels, because of their uniform. Even their buses, before the yellow color came, they used to have a green bus. So they are proud of that name, which it has come through the color of their uniform. So when we talk of one color, is that school going to, are we going to lose that glory of that school being known as the Green Angels? And also in my constituency, there's a school called Kangtit Girls, Moi Kangtit Girls. They are known by the name the White Angels because of their uniform, in the same way. So when we have one uniform, we are going to lose this glory in some of our schools or institutions. The other issue is the issue of this color we are talking about. Kenya is big. We have even some tribes like, unless we want to say also, everybody in Kenya to have one attire, which I don't believe. If there's a Maasais, they can agree, because they have their own uniform or their own color. So the issue of color, it is just something everybody, even me, there are some clothes I don't put. Even if you buy me one, I will say because of the color I can't take it, because I have my own colors. So it is good to leave our schools to choose the color they want to choose, but let's determine the prices of this uniform. That is the problem when we talk about the uniform. It's not the color, it's not the texture, it's not what. I can just buy any clothes I take my kid to school. So let's talk about infrastructure in schools, so that regardless of which kind of uniform you have, you can go and study and you can go to university. It doesn't matter. So let's talk about transport in schools. Let's talk about teachers. Let's talk about learning in schools. There are so many things to talk about so that we can help our schools than uniform. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I oppose.
The next opportunity, honorable members, goes to the Honorable Miruka Alpha, member for Bomachoge Chache.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start congratulating my colleague, Madam Muchomba, for this fantastic motion. But I want to support the motion conditionally, that is not going to affect the school code and the school color. You see, we are living in a country of a lot of tribes, and we value our culture. I don't allow that we reach a time that we can say that every Kenyan should wear one cloth color code, or one choice of this. We should be leaving to everybody, every individual, to have his own choice. That implies to our schools. We have several schools. That standardization, let's talk about quality, talk about other aspects, familiarity, but when we come back to the code of the school, let's leave it the choice of the school to determine the color, the code of their choice, because we come from different cultural and we promote culture in this country. Number two, I want to agree that this House is now focusing on education. Just yesterday we were discussing about CBC. Today we are discussing about the uniforms. How I wish we know the value of education in our country. That we put more emphasis. We focus on education more than anything else, because education is the backbone of any country. School uniforms is one factor, is one element in the building up of a mind of a pupil or a student, because it factors a lot. It's like having a school bus. I remember the former regime changed the school buses to be yellow, which was a good idea, but it had a sinister motive, like the uniforms for police, which it was having an element of cost, whereby some specific suppliers from one corner wanted to engage.
The education tide is changing in Kenya. 844 is slowly marching to its sunset with the entry of the competency-based curriculum. Will Kenya surmount the challenges?
The Ministry of Education will move with speed to ensure that there is synergy and there is seamless transition of all our children under the new CBC education curriculum.
Join KBC Channel 1 on Prime Edition on Wednesday for a special bulletin on the state of primary education in the country.
Enjoy a selection of the best.